What was the most satisfying time where you caught someone lying? I travel for work. I 90% of the time park in economy at the airport. I think $14 per day. About a 10 to 15 minutes walk. A few times out of necessity to catch a flight I park in the garage. I think $24 per day. 5 minutes walk. Usually 2 to 3 day trips. Not a huge expense. My boss suggests I park in off-site shuttle parking. About $11 a day. But a pain in the butt as you need a bunch more time to plan for the shuttle. He said he does it because it is cheaper for the company, which he owns. One day while walking through the garage from on-site economy, they're in the reserved parking. Closest and like $40 per day is my boss's truck, and reserve takes planning. He wasn't just running late and needed to park in the garage to make a flight. I just put my business card under his wiper. I never brought it up, and I haven't heard any complaints about parking on my expense reports since. I love the elegance of your method. In college I had this friend who was a very good pole vaulter. Seriously, one of the top in the state for his division. This was back in 2008. He tells all of his family and friends and even his boss that he was recruited to compete in the Beijing Olympics. Well, his close friends, including myself, already call bulls, but when the day comes he is nowhere to be found. In fact, we didn't see him for a couple of days, and he started texting pics from Beijing. So we were doubting ourselves a bit. Then we were driving along the freeway, and guess who's broken down on the side of the road like 2 days after he left? Mr. Olympian. When we pulled over, the look on his face was priceless. He stood by his story too, and said because of the time difference he already went and came back. Haha, he's a freaking idiot. I still don't know what he had to gain from such an elaborate bull's story. I work at a daycare. If a child is sick they will be sent home cause we don't want to risk infecting the whole class. Generally happens anyway. A lot parents don't agree with this policy, which leads to parents arguing with us that their kid isn't sick when they obviously are. My favorite time this happened was when a mother dropped her little boy off in an eye patch, yet the toddler was wearing a dang eye patch. I ask what happened and she says he hit his eye or something, which I didn't really believe. She says whatever I do don't take off his eye patch. I pick him up and immediately lift up his eye patch. Pink eye. She was soupy at me for doing that, and she was shocked I did it. The look on her face was so satisfying, although I got yelled at by my supervisor for it. Should have asked the super whether they'd rather have 1p of parent or 30. I used to work at a grocery store. One of my co-workers was constantly calling in sick, claiming she had one illness or another. Management couldn't just con her for it as it was a union shop, so she had protection unless she could be caught in a bald-faced and indefensible lie. One Friday I get called in to cover her shift because she called in claiming she was very sick and needed a kidney transplant. On her next shift on Monday she's wandering around with gauze wrapped around her stomach and back claiming that she had that kidney transplant on the weekend. That she had been so sick that they rushed her into surgery and put her at the top of the transplant list. When she does it to me I stop her and say isn't the recovery time on a transplant at least a month or 2? The hospital shouldn't have let you out. Realizing I've caught her in a lie she rushes to the front desk, claims she shouldn't be here and that she needs to go home or she'll pop her surgery stitches. A few days later she was fired when she couldn't provide proof of the surgery. She tried to sue but no lawyer would take her case. It was hilarious. I'm a librarian and I'm actually very proud of this one. Back then I was in charge of the cinema and music section of my library. This guy came with his son and asked me where to find our Puff Daddy CDs. We have one and I show him on the shelves where to find it. Then I was called in another place of the library and go check on my colleagues. On my way back to the music section, I see him coming out of the library and I don't know why. Maybe he seemed dodgy, but I have a feeling something is wrong. I go check, the CD is gone. It's not appearing on his library card, so he didn't borrow it. I have a look if he didn't misplace it, but it's not there. The guy just stole the freaking Puff Daddy CD with his 8-year-old son from a public library where you can borrow IT for free. At this point I do nothing because we have no proof and no security camera. A few weeks later, the son and his sister, 8 and 10 years old, come to the library again and borrow some CD. I'm watching them and to my knowledge, they didn't steal anything. and I don't want to confront them because it would break my heart to have them stopping to come to the library because of their father balls. But this whole story still bother me. So a few months later, I decide to try something. I still had the stolen CD barcode and I just decided to add it to their library card, as if they borrowed it. Worst case scenario, they say they don't have it and I apologize and say that it's a mistake from the library. A few days later they arrive, take some documents, return some, and just before leaving I proceed to explain them that they still have a document, a Puff Daddy CD that they need to return. The look of panic in their eyes and incomprehension was just delightful. They didn't say anything and a few days later they came back with the CD. I don't really care about Puff Daddy, and we could easily have replaced it, but just for the principle, it was one of my greatest victories. The best part of that one is not that they were taught a lesson not to steal, but rather they now probably think the library has some magical method of knowing when an item leaves, even if it isn't properly checked out. They got some sensors or something, which means they'll likely never do it again in any library, due to the futility. Nicely done. I helped an older woman who mistakenly rented a room in her house to the most evil family I've ever met. She offered the 2 rooms and private bathroom to the family of 4 because the house they were renting caught fire and they were forced out into a hotel. She just wanted to help. Took them dinners out to the hotel and all the insane things you'd imagine the nicest person in the world to do. So they stabbed her in the back, never paid rent, abused the heck out of her laundry machine and ate her food. So I went over one day and could hear the toilet running from the hallway. They didn't give a crap about wasting water. So I grabbed a recorder and knocked on the door asking if I could come in and check on the running toilet. The mother just banged on the door back at me so loud it sounded like she was going to break the door. Then shouted at me through the door about how she was going to bury the old woman in the backyard. She eventually let me in. I fixed the toilet and moved on to other projects around the house. Figured that was over with. Nope. About 15 minutes later I see a cop car in the driveway. Okay, this is bulls, but I guess I should go talk to them. Cop sees me coming and as soon as I was within earshot he starts lecturing me about how illegal it is to harass tenants. I stopped him and said, "You're yelling at me without even asking for my side of the story. Would you like to hear what actually happened?" So I played the recording. He spun around and unleashed heck fury on this woman for lying to him, all while I stood there smiling at her from over his shoulder. I'll never forget that feeling of actual justice in the middle of a 8-month-long nightmare. Please tell me the tenants were removed. I was around 15 years old and had a package delivered to my house. My sick neighbor came over, paced back and forth in front of the door before smoothly opening our gate, coming to the door, and picking up my package. I opened the door as she was walking off and she turned white as a ghost when she heard the door open. When I asked her WTF she was doing with my package, she explained to me that she was going to protect it for me, that she didn't know it was mine. Before I demanded she hand over my package and leave, I snapped at this lady, which was abnormal for shy little 15-year-old me. I was furious because what was inside that package was a gift for my mother, who was at work at the time. I'll never forget that. One of my staff, who is unfortunately family with the owner so he's not getting canned anytime soon, is the biggest liar I have ever met. We'll call him Jim. He lies about everything, regardless of importance. He's been caught in lies multiple times and really just doesn't care. If someone is sick, guaranteed he will be off the next day having caught whatever someone had. My whole department is female. 5 females, except for him. One day almost all of us were suffering from some horrible period cramps. Everyone was complaining about the pain but no one said it was because of their period, because it's usually pretty obvious why. The HR department has a wonderful supply of meds and so I had to empty their stock of Midol and heat pads. Some of the staff was teasing that they will bring chocolate as a peace offering before entering our department. The next day he emails in that he's sick and he caught the horrible stomach bug all the ladies in the department had. He's so sore he can't move, has a migraine, blah blah. Word spread quickly and Jim has forever been mocked as the dude who had to take time off work for his period. He won't be let go but he does get his pay docked when he flakes off like this. It was worth it to be able to make fun of him forever. When I moved out of a house I had been renting years ago, The landlady decided that she wanted to keep my security deposit. We had been on friendly terms for the 5+ years I had lived there. She even invited me to dinner parties at her house. I had been a model tenant, so I don't know why she turned on me aside from pure greed. When I persisted in asking her for the money, she started making up reasons to keep it, claiming that she had to do costly cleanup of some mess I allegedly left. By luck, before things went sour, I had arranged to store some furniture at the property until I was ready for it. When I went to retrieve it, it was obvious that the property was exactly as I had left it, and the details of what she had claimed were entirely false. She had no answer when I confronted her with this fact, and she finally grudgingly paid up. I still see her around and she tries to act like nothing ever happened, but she is dead to me. How someone can let a little money trump all reason and integrity is beyond me. In a large business meeting, boardroom style, something went wrong on a project my company did. The executives were nervous as heck because we were being blamed for a failure and the client was demanding we pay for it. The thing is, I was the project manager for this job and had recently been promoted. I warned the client about a potential problem when the project was underway, but they chose to ignore it and press on. Now that it was failing, they wanted us to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix it, and our competitors were already about to take the next multi-million-dollar sign project. So the client's manager outlines his case and asks when he can expect us to fix it for him, assuming we'll just cave in hopes of getting future business. That's my company's MO. They even said our on-site rep should have caught the problem, so this whole thing was our fault. Our project manager clearly didn't know what he was doing, otherwise he would have caught this. My boss was about to respond, but I gently interrupted. I basically said I was the on-site PM and did catch the problem immediately. I have a few documents for your perusal. I had with me the printed email exchange where I warned about the problem and advised how to fix it, as well as the client's very clear response that they thought it was worth the risk and wouldn't change anything. The client's face turned red. He looked at my bosses and said they should have told him who I was. We wound up paying for the fix anyway in exchange for being awarded the next project. This kind of thing happens constantly in my business, though usually on a much smaller, less grand, and less public scale. My entire job is sire. You should have told us ahead of time so I know which lies to use. I come from a smallish town. Brother made it the MLB, was at the grocery store with my dad, who was wearing the MLB team's jacket at the time. Checker says to us, "You know, I helped that kid get to the majors." My dad just politely pulled out his ID and told him to check the last name. Checker just laughed embarrassingly, immediately shut up, and gave us extra Monopoly tickets for our time. To clarify, my brother made it to a non-local team, so my dad wearing the jacket is what sparked the conversation. At work one day, a co-worker started telling me and another co-worker a story about being stopped by the police. He went into great detail about how he stopped at a gas station for a drink and there were 2 cops standing out front and nobody else in the parking lot. He gave the cops a wave, being nice, bought his drink, and left. Less than 100 feet down the street, these same 2 cops pulled him over. They told him that they smelled weed when he got out of the car. He asked the cops if they could smell it now, standing next to his open window. They said no, but it was obvious it came from him. They asked if they could search his car, which he angrily let them, telling them he wanted the cops to climb through his hot car to find nothing. While one cop did the search, the other cop told him to calm down. He looked nervous, to which he said, "I'm not P. I'm angry. You didn't smell weed, you smell the shaved head and tattoos." The cops found nothing and let him go about his business. The lie. It was my story. It happened to me months before and I told that story at work back then. He even quoted me, except I said long hair and tattoos. A few minutes into the story, my other co-worker and I start giving each other the side eye, realizing he was literally telling me my own story. I think he realized it towards the end because he quickly finished up the story and left without ever mentioning it again. We never brought it up either. I had such a bad case of second-hand embarrassments for the guy. Plus everybody else already heard about it and he was forever branded the liar. When his ex-girlfriend sent me a picture of a pregnancy test, but couldn't hold it up to her daily newspaper, she broke and admitted it was fake. Queen of douche. Frick that crap. I had a girl do the same thing. Found out that she lived in so many places because that's how she makes money. Fake abortions. It made my heart hurt and my dong feel sick. I caught my mom eating my Halloween candy when I was little after she told me it wasn't her. Getting new candy from the store because of it was pretty satisfying. In my house, that was called dad tax and everyone had to pay. I knew my ex-wife was cheating but didn't tell her that I knew. Took her out to dinner and I casually asked questions about who she had been spending time with while I was at sea. She barely worked so she had to spend her time doing something. She failed to mention the guy that had been staying at my house for nearly 2 months. The guy she had to call the cops on just to get to leave because I was coming home in 2 days. So I slid her a copy of the police report that was filed for the incident and watched as she crumbled over the fact she had been caught. And I didn't have to say a word. Divorce court was even more satisfying, in case anyone was wondering. Please elaborate on court, LOL. Sued a bloke for not paying his mortgage. He filed an application claiming he'd never been served with the court proceedings, and he'd just found them in his front yard. He also managed in 2 pages to set out 11 separate claimed defenses to the claim. Oh, and he also claimed he didn't speak a good English. Something didn't stack up. So I ran some court file searches and discovered he'd defaulted on another mortgage a few years earlier and filed the exact same affidavit back then. Even included the exact same photos of the court documents supposedly lying in his yard. The case did not end well for him. I played college basketball, and one of my teammates had a chronic condition with the truth. My first summer, we were roommates, and I always suspected he was stealing my clothes. At one point, every player received a custom pair of Jordans in our school's colors, but within a week mine went missing. A month later, I noticed my roommate teammate was wearing a pair of Jordans. Later in the day we were in a gym and I waited until we were all relaxing, and he had the soles of his shoes facing forward as he sat. I told all of my other teammates what I suspected, and approached him. Hey, have you seen my Jordans? NAA, I already told you. Now leave me alone. Then why is my number written on the soles of the shoes you're wearing? The team equipment staff had predicted some shoes might go missing, so they had marked each pair. I made him take the shoes off right there, since I couldn't trust I'd get them back at the end of the day. After that, his nickname on the team was Simba, for being the Lion King. One more story, since people found the first amusing. We had an athletic trainer whose job it was to make sure we were taking care of our bodies. If we got hurt, it was his responsibility to make sure we were getting treatment before and after every practice or game. My roommate had sprained his ankle earlier that week in practice, and the rule was if you weren't with the training staff getting treatment, then you weren't really hurt. Skipping treatment, but saying you were hurt, was a huge no-no with our coach. I wasn't there for my own injury, and the trainer comes up to say, "Where's your roommate? He was supposed to be here 30 minutes ago, and practice starts soon." I didn't know, so the trainer calls him. Over the phone, my roommate tells our trainer that he's just getting out of class on campus, and it'll take him at least another 20 minutes to get back, so no time for treatment. The trainer hung up the phone and stared at me with an incredulous look. This MFer just told me he was on campus. I called his room phone. Once had a person work for me who would always call out and use her past health problems as a crutch to miss work all the time. One Monday she called in, gave me some generic illness excuse and said she couldn't get out of bed. That morning another department had a breakfast meeting at IHOP, and saw her there eating breakfast with her friends looking like she was in perfect health. The picture evidence sent to me was oh so satisfying. I was in a bar having some beers when I feel a tap on my shoulder. It was a guy I went to school with. I didn't really hang out with him back then, but decided to catch up and share stories anyways. At one point he mentioned sleeping with a girl I knew very well. A girl I knew for a fact was a virgin until after she graduated. I just kind of nodded and let him go. Then, I said something along the lines of, "Oh, I actually know her very well. We'll have to hit her up. She comes out and drinks with me all the time." He turned white. The look of horror in his eyes was great. My sister is a really cute blonde. She's heard of plenty of wild nights she's had that have never happened. Some guys are just buttholes who play pretend a lot. I had a boss who kept on getting angry at me because I wasn't doing what he told me to do. Finally one day, I decided to start writing down exactly what he told me, dated it, and kept record of it. Then one day came where inevitably, "What the heck are you doing? Exactly what you told me to do. I never told you to do that." "Well, I have it written here." Pulls out note card on the 22nd of May 2016. "You told me specifically to do this task, exactly like this, and never do it any other way." I finally won. I started standing up for myself a bit more in the office, and I was respected for it. Pretty inexcusable honestly. I'm a single mother and I took my car in to get serviced post Thomas fire. I expected that my cabin air filters were full of crap and soot and I didn't want my kids breathing that, so I popped them out and replaced them myself before taking the car in. I get to the dealership when it reopens and say I need the oil changed and a once over. About 3 hours later, I get a call that says, "Man, you need a new timing belt, a new starter, and cabin air filters." I was like, "Oh really?" I said, "I'll be right there because I want to see what they look like." And the guys actually showed me some really black filters. I pulled out my receipt for the filters bought the day before and said, "So, were you going to put dealer filters in or just leave in the filters from Pep Boys that I bought and installed yesterday?" He was toast. I asked about the timing belt, because my car doesn't have one. It has a chain, and said, "So, can you show me the timing belt issues?" He took me to the car and popped the hood and then started looking for something that wasn't there. I told him he could just stop right there and get the manager. The manager was sort of annoyed and insisted there must have been a mistake and my guy must have called the wrong person. Until I pointed out that he took me to the correct vehicle and that my name matched the paperwork the guy had been holding. He offered to do the oil change for free, but by that point I just said, "No, I'll take it somewhere I trust." I dated this guy off and on for about a year. Things didn't always add up, but I was young and dumb and made excuses. During that year his mom passed away from pancreatic cancer. He relapsed and then went to rehab. And after he got out he moved a few states away for a fresh start near where his grandparents lived. We decided we were done at that point, but he still emailed occasionally and a couple times he'd randomly show up on my doorstep saying he was in town and needed to see me. After one such surprise visit I emailed him and said that I couldn't keep doing this and to please not come by anymore. A year or so passed and I got a bug up my butt one night to Google him and found a baby registry with his name on it. Looked up the baby mama on Facebook and found pictures of them together living together just a few hours away, and during the time that he and I were dating, I was able to determine that when we first started seeing each other they weren't together. But when he was supposedly in California and missed me so much and didn't want to be with anyone else, he was actually just a few hours away with her. The kicker: his mom was still alive too. It became clear to me that he was a pathological liar and I'd basically fallen in love with someone that didn't really exist. Here's the satisfying part. Literally the next day he showed up on my doorstep. The first thing I said is, "Where's baby mama? Does she know you're here?" His face dropped. He started stammering, making excuses that I didn't know what was really going on. He even insisted that his mom was dead. I felt like I was in a girl power movie moment as I told him to get the frick off my porch and never come see me again. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.